Today I wanted to go over this exponential equation with you guys, and in fact this one right here has infinitely many solutions. It's a little bit tricky though. Let's have a look. We have 2 to the x is equal to -2 in the parentheses and then raised to the x power. Firstly though, the bases are different, and the worst thing is that this base right here is negative. If you want to put log on both sides, you end up with like a negative number instead of a log, so it's not preferred. Let's not do that. So this is how I approach this right here. So this 2 to the x stays, but for the -2, I am going to look at it as -1 times 2. That should be fine, yeah? And then still raise that to the x power. And here we have a multiplication, so you can kind of like distribute the power. So here we have -1 raised to the x power and then times 2 to the x power. Now notice that we have 2 to the x on both sides, and I will have to mention that 2 to the x power is never equal to 0, no matter what x is. Please do not say negative infinity though, because negative infinity is not a number. Well, we know that this is never equal to 0, so we can legitimately divide 2 to the x to both sides, and they cancel. So this right here gives us 1. And this right here is -1 to the x power. Now the question is, -1 to some power equals 1. What's x? How is this possible? Well, think about it. If we have -1 in the parentheses and square that, let's say like this. This means we have -1 times -1. Of course, that's +1. So it works. And it does not have to be just 2, it can be 4. You 4 of them and you still end up with a +1. In fact, any even number will work. Even though you have a -2, that will also work. No, I mean like -1 in parentheses and then -2. This gives us 1 over -1 raised to the second power, and we know that's 1, so it's 1 over 1, so this is still 1. So from here, we can say that x is an even number. Any even number will work. But is this all the solutions though? Well, not really. This is just one set of the solutions, because we can also have, or x is anything that you have an even power on the top over an odd number. And since 0 is not odd, so you don't put 0 on the bottom. And I'm going to explain this a little bit more right here. So here's the deal. X can be a fraction, and you just have to make sure that the numerator is even and the denominator has to be odd. So I will just do an example for you guys real quick. If you have -1, that's raised to the 2 over 3 power. How do we do this though? Firstly, the over 3 power means that you take the cube root. If you take the cube root of -1 and then raise that to the second power, work this inside out. -1, when you take cube root, it's doable, because -1 times -1 times -1 is -1, so the cube root of -1 is -1, so the inside is -1, and then raise that to the second power. That will give us 1. Okay? And then right here, let's just stay with the real numbers. Even though some people may argue that, hey, we actually have like 2 more complex solutions, but let's not talk about that. Here are all the solutions. Either x is an even number or x is a fraction in the form of that the top is even and the bottom is odd. That's it.